Today's episode is brought to you by Progressive, where drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average. Quote now at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary.
Things change, but Deer Park Natural Spring Water is a constant you can count on, bringing you the essence of home for 150 years and counting. Sourced from carefully selected springs, Deer Park Natural Spring Water has naturally occurring electrolytes for a crisp, refreshing taste. Find Deer Park Natural Spring Water at your favorite local retailer today. After 150 years, there's only one thing left to say. Deer Park, that's still good water.
Stories! We all have them. Some are Titanic, some are Titiny. The Titiny was a ship that hit an ice cube and sank in my bathtub. There were no survivors, except stories. Welcome to FUZZTOWN Stories. Today's tale, the Alveolar.
The ghost shark swum through the air, snapping its ethereal jaws at Kate. She hopped off the rock and held up the vial of the first mouth-washing. She uncorked it and sprinkled some of the ancient mouthwash on the shark. It howled like a wolf and turned away, its jaws chomping at the air. Ghost sharks were annoying because you had no idea how old they were. Sharks had basically stayed the same for 100 million years, so there was no telling how long this beast had been haunting the Montana hills. With a dinosaur ghost, you could place that in time. Same with a human. But when something had lasted for so long, you could be dealing with a shark that died yesterday, or 65 million years ago. Not that aging a ghost shark was vital, but Kate liked to know her opponent. She was always curious. She was often smart. She was currently smacked to the ground by its spectral tail. She tied back her mess of curly red hair. It was time to get serious. Being the secret defender of the Dentites and Tootham in general was hard work, but it was fun. She'd tussled with the Mollard men of Hanging Rock and Chompers the Unhinged. He was a jerk. And of course, sharks were known for their teeth, and this ghost shark had been causing trouble for a while now. In fact, some say it had killed Vice President William Wheeler. And he'd been a friend to the Dentites and even granted them the right of toothless brushes in the Indiana court system, so this shark had to go. The shark's eyes turned bright green and it swam up into the sky. It hid in the low-hanging cumulus clouds. Great, Kate thought. It was preparing to dive-bomb her and ghost chomp her to death. Kate was the 7th of 8 children, born to the Brule family. She was always different. She loved hearing the stories of Bernard Glouch, who had gone off to track down dental lore when she was 6. She lived in the house across the street, and his mom would often let her read his letters. When she turned 16, her father had tried to pair her off with Horace Abernathy, but she didn't want it. She kicked him in the shins and ran off. She preferred hunting frogs and shooting her rifle. She also enjoyed mascara because why not, it's cool. But when you're walking around in mascara with a rifle strapped to your back with a mess of red hair and tons of freckles, people start to talk. According to some Dentite lore, freckles were a sign of the fuzz, which was straight bunkum, but you know superstitions run deep. She was surprised when she was called into the office of the Grand Cuspid. Grayson Keyes was newly elected to the position and asked if she had ever heard of the Alveolar. Of course she had. The alveoli were the sockets in the jaw that kept the teeth in the mouth. That was true, Grayson said, but the Dentites also had their own alveolar. The alveolar is hidden, but it keeps everything grounded. Since the days of Horace McMenamin, there had always been a secret force who went out into the world and rid the Dentites of those who would rip them from the mouth of life. The last alveolar was killed trying to stop the rogue scientist Vendetta von Blush, who was working on a pair of exploding dentures that would be gifted to the King of Sweden, which would explode during St. Apollonia Day, the patron saint of teeth, thus turning the Scandinavians against teeth. He'd managed to get the dentures, but had to put them in his own mouth and, well, he exploded. To death. Grayson asked if Kate wanted to become the next Alveolar, but she'd have to give up all connection to her life in New Molar. She'd be on her own, her name and memory erased from the town. She'd have to say she was an apostate and renounce dentalism. Every dentite would view her as a heretic and overall rascal. But in secret, she'd work for the Enamel Council, doing deeds too controversial to be done in the warm light of day. Kate considered it and agreed. In a secret potluck, at the altar of Rinse and Spit, she was given the 7 weapons of toothdom and dubbed the Alveolar.
Things change, but Deer Park Natural Spring Water is a constant you can count on, bringing you the essence of home for 150 years and counting. Sourced from carefully selected springs, Deer Park Natural Spring Water has naturally occurring electrolytes for a crisp, refreshing taste. Find Deer Park Natural Spring Water at your favorite local retailer today. After 150 years, there's only one thing left to say. Deer Park, that's still good water.
Thanks for supporting the Fable and Folly Network. Here's another show we know you'll love.
Where am I? Welcome to Desert Skies, traveler. Your journey through the physical plane has come to an end. I am the attendant. My colleague here is the mechanic. Yo! This is your last stop on your way to the great beyond. It's our job to make sure you're prepared for the ride. Now, before hitting the road, we have an impressive selection of over 34 varieties of microwavable burritos. What's going on?
There's gotta be a better afterlife than this. I mean, come on!
That's offensive.
Something seems to be wrong with me. You left something major undone.
I have a life outside of this gas station, you know.
You quite literally do not.
Any hobbies? Nope.
Ever travel?
Nope.
Love interest?
Are you kidding?
Oh my god. You're like the human version of a plain bagel.
Cash register.
How can I help you, attendant?
Play some music?
You got it.
It's kind of funny, though. What I needed wasn't back there. It was here, waiting for me.
I wonder what it feels like, Mac, to miss the physical plane, the people you left behind.
You know, I had a wife who died 3 years ago.
Wish I could go back.
No, you don't need to go back. You just need to be here.
And a new traveler approaches. Ready, team?
Ready.
Attendant.
Good. Let's do this. Find Desert Skies wherever you listen to podcasts.
The next day, she went to the Mouthatorium and publicly called the Ur-tooth the jerk tooth, and then mooned the tooth, saying, "Press these hams." She slapped her butt, and was quickly drummed out of town by the New Molar Drum Society. She went up to the lonely Helena Pass and looked down at New Molar and apologized to the tooth for her display. She looked at the house she grew up in, all the people she knew. Not a big loss. She smiled. A new adventure was awaiting her. She opened the tooth-colored envelope that the precious premolar had slipped her before declaring her an outcast. This was the first day of the rest of her life. The shark came blasting out of its cloud cover, its jaws wide open. She was ready. She took out the unbreakable floss of Jormund and roped the shark. The floss was imbued with the prayers of the holy molars and could stick even to ethereal beings. She grabbed hold and rode that shark like a bronco buster at a rodeo. She used the floss to swing up and onto the shark's head. It was thrashing about and snapping wildly. She gripped that floss in one hand as she pulled out the drill that drills itself. A dental drill so powerful that it could drill a hole in the air. But with each use it would wear away until after the 10th use it would have drilled itself into nothing. She slammed it into the ghost shark's head and into its ghost brain. The shark yelled, "Ouch!" and then vanished. She fell to the ground and her head hit a rather large rock. She rubbed her bruised noggin as she got to her feet. "See ya, shark," she thought. Off to hell or heaven or wherever it was sharks went. Maybe the swimming pool of the finned god. Who knows? She had read that book on shark religions, but it was written by a walrus, and they can't be trusted. Wait, was any of that true, or was it the concussion talking? Better get to the hospital. She found her trusty bicycle where she stashed it and headed off to Fort Last Hope. Once there, the frontier doctor patched her up and gave her a cold compress. Then she took the doctor to bed, and he was the one that needed an ice pack the next morning. Nothing like besting the supernatural to get the motor humming. She stayed at the fort for a few days to have follow-up appointments, both in and out of the doctor's office. Modern medicine sure could be fun. About a week later, a stocky man in a raccoon cap came by the fort selling all sorts of toothpicks. He kept to himself and cooked river fish in a tin pan he kept tied to his belt. Kate approached him one night. He talked about how there was a war about to break out in Europe. Then he smiled and mentioned Bernard Glouch, the old relic hunter. Kate pretended not to know what he was talking about. He cut her a piece of eel and slid it towards her. She popped it into her mouth, but didn't swallow it. Back in her room, she spit it out, and under the eel's rubbery skin was a small note. It said simply, Wyoming, Fuzz, Cult. She recognized the looping curves of Grand Cuspid Grayson's handwriting. She let herself get nostalgic for a moment, remembering the pie cuspids her mother used to bake. She could still smell them when she closed her eyes. She popped the bit of eel back in her mouth, but this time chewed it and ate it, bones and all. Wyoming ain't far, she thought. I probably have enough time for one last checkup with the doc. By morning, the doc was sated, her bicycle was loaded up, and she was off. The Alveolar's work was never done, and thank the tooth for that.
FUZZTOWN Stories is a Roy Gold production. It was written by Jonathan Goldberg with music by David Origlieri. Today's episode was read by Amanda Jones. Please think about donating to the show and future Roy Gold shows on patreon.com or Himalaya. Please think about mooses. Isn't that cool? We were all thinking about mooses for a second there. That's the power of Moose Baby. Moose Baby is a pilot I'm pitching to Disney Plus this week, so please tweet it or whatever. As always, thanks for listening and have a suntabulous bicuspid of a day.
Can't get enough for The House of Sunshine? Then join me, New Molar historian Lyman Keys, in the Himalaya Plus section, where you'll get commentaries, special exclusive episodes where I answer your questions about New Molar and beyond, as well as a community to chat with fellow Sunshine fans. Join Himalaya Plus and speak with the creators about the show and get exclusive updates and access. I'll see you in Himalaya Plus. Lyman Keys, Lyman at you in Himalaya Plus.
Moose baby, he's a moose baby. Moose baby, look at those tiny, tiny horns.
The Fable and Folly Network, where fiction producers flourish.